I'm 68 years old, and I never thought I'd be starting over at this age. 43 years of marriage, 3 kids, a big house in a wealthy suburb that cost me half my life to pay for, and a building supply business I built from scratch. All that ended the day my son Henry said those words that cut me like a knife. The turkey, the cider, the decorations. Even when my knees started to fail, I kept climbing onto the roof to hang the lights that Lucy, my wife, loved so much. This year was no different. I spent the whole week preparing the house, cleaning every corner, getting out the special china we only used on holidays. Mr. Thomas, don't wear yourself out, Hope, the woman who's helped us clean for years, told me. Your children should come and help you. Why would I bother them? They all have their own lives, I replied, struggling up the ladder to get the decoration boxes from the attic. The truth is, my children had been distant for a long time. Henry, the oldest, married Mary 8 years ago. He's an architect. He has his own firm. He barely visits 3 times a year. Sarah, the middle child, lives in Cleveland with her husband and my 2 grandchildren. We talk on the phone every couple of weeks, but she only comes for the holidays. And James, the youngest, even though he lives right here in Chicago, is always too busy with his job at a tech company. Sometimes I think I made a mistake by working so much. While I was building my business, I missed a lot of moments in their lives. Lucy always held it against me, but I thought I was doing the right thing. Securing their future, paying for good schools, giving them everything I never had. My father abandoned us when I was 7, and my mother had to raise me and my brothers by washing other people's clothes. I swore my children would never know that kind of need. The house started to fill up around 7 in the evening. First, Sarah arrived with her family from Cleveland. The kids ran to hug me. "Grandpa, did you buy us candy?" asked Emily, the little one, clinging to my neck. "Of course I did, Princess. They're hidden in the pantry, behind the cans of beans." Then James arrived, alone as always. At 35, he was still single, though I suspect there's someone in his life he doesn't want to introduce. "Dad, you look tired," he said, giving me a quick hug. "You should hire someone to do all this. And miss all the fun?" "No way," I replied, hiding the pain in my back that had been bothering me all day. Henry and Mary were the last to arrive, accompanied by Gerald, her father. Ever since his wife died 3 years ago, Gerald spent a lot of time with them. It didn't bother me. On the contrary, he was a good man, retired like me, though he had been a university professor. He always had interesting stories to tell. Dinner went on as usual. The food, the anecdotes, the gifts. Lucy served the cider while I carved the turkey. Everything seemed normal until Henry announced he had something important to tell us. "Mary and I are moving to Spain," he said with a smile. "I was offered a chance to lead a restoration project in Barcelona. It's the opportunity of a lifetime." A silence fell over the table. Lucy was the first to speak. "And when were you planning on telling us? The day you got on the plane?" "Mom, they just confirmed it a week ago. We were waiting for the right moment." "And what about your firm?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "It took you so long to build it. I'll leave Robert, my partner, in charge. I'll stay on as a remote consultant." I didn't say anything else. I felt a lump in my throat. Barcelona was on the other side of the ocean. When would we see them again? Lucy started asking questions. When were they leaving? Did they have a place to live? Had they thought about the language? Gerald intervened. "Don't you worry. We're already looking at apartments online. I have a friend in Barcelona who is helping us." "Us?" Lucy asked, confused. Mary took her father's hand. "Dad is coming with us. We already arranged everything so he can stay as long as he wants." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Gerald was going with them, while we, his parents, were finding out at the same time as the rest of the family. "That's great you're taking your dad," James said, raising his wine glass. "It's important to have family nearby when you're far away." "Yes. Besides, Gerald has been a huge support for us," Henry added. "He's always willing to help us, without judging our decisions." I couldn't help but feel that was a dig at me. I had always been demanding with my kids, especially Henry. When he told me he wanted to study architecture, instead of taking over the family business, I had my doubts. I supported him eventually, but maybe I never showed it enough. "Your father has always been like that," Lucy commented. "I remember when you were little, he barely let you breathe with all his demands." "Those were different times, Lucy," I defended myself. "You do what you think is best for your children. Well, sometimes the best thing is to listen and support, not impose, she replied. The conversation moved on, but I wasn't really present anymore. I felt betrayed, replaced. When they brought out dessert, Emily asked Henry if she could visit them in Spain. Of course, cousin. We'll have a special room for visitors. And can I go with Grandpa Gerald? He promised he'd take me to the Barcelona aquarium. Absolutely, Henry replied, smiling. Grandpa Gerald will be there as long as he wants. That's when it happened. I don't know if it was the alcohol, the accumulated exhaustion, or just that I couldn't hold back what I was feeling anymore. You're so lucky, Henry, I said bitterly. Your father-in-law seems willing to follow you to the ends of the earth. I would have done the same for any of you, but you never gave me the chance. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Henry stared at me. Dad, don't start with your drama. This isn't about you. Drama? That's what you call finding out by chance that my son is moving to another continent? We're telling you now, aren't we? He replied, clearly annoyed. Besides, what did you expect? That we'd consult you on every decision like we were kids? No, but I would have at least expected you to have the decency to talk to your mother and me privately first. Mary tried to intervene, but Henry was already too worked up. What for? So you could tell me all the reasons why it's a bad idea, like you always do. I never. Please, Dad, he interrupted me. It's been like this my whole life. Nothing we do is ever good enough for you. Do you think I don't know how disappointed you were when I decided not to take over your business? That's not true, I protested, though deep down I knew he had a point. I only wanted what was best for you. What's best, according to who? According to you? Henry was red with anger. Do you know why we're leaving? It's not just for the job. It's because I want my son to grow up with a grandfather who supports him unconditionally, not one who constantly judges him. You're pregnant? Sarah asked, turning to Mary, trying to change the subject. Mary nodded, tears in her eyes. 4 months. We wanted to wait a little longer to tell everyone. Another blow. My first grandchild would be born on the other side of the ocean, far away from me. Congratulations, I said mechanically, while feeling something break inside me. Gerald stood up and hugged his daughter. Everyone started congratulating them, momentarily forgetting the tension. Everyone except me. I sat there watching the family I had built drift further and further away from me. When the conversation turned back to the move, Henry mentioned they were considering selling their house here in the States. It's a good investment, Gerald commented. With that money, they could buy something bigger in Barcelona. But what if things don't work out there, I asked. It's always good to have a plan B. Henry sighed with frustration. Always the negative, Dad. For once, can't you just be happy for us? I'm just being practical. I defended myself. The world is full of uncertainties. Life is for living, not for fearing, Gerald intervened. I told them to sell. You have to take risks. That's why we love you so much, Gerald, Henry said, raising his glass. You always support us. You always understand us. You're more of a father to me than. He stopped, but the damage was done. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone at the table seemed to have frozen. Mary nudged Henry, who seemed to realize what he had just implied. Dad, I didn't mean. What didn't you mean, Henry? My voice was calm, but inside I felt like I was crumbling. That your wife's father is a better father than me? Is that it? No, I just. My son said, I repeated, looking around the table. My father-in-law is more of a father than you. In my own house, at the dinner I prepared with my own hands, on the holiday I worked so hard to make special, I slowly stood up from the table. If you'll excuse me, I need some air. I went out to the backyard without waiting for a response. The night was cold, but I barely felt it. 43 years of marriage, 3 kids, a whole life dedicated to my family. And this is how it ended, sitting alone in the garden, while my son celebrated another man as his real father. I don't know how long I was out there. I could hear muffled voices from the house, probably arguing about what had happened. Eventually the door opened and Lucy came out to find me. Thomas, it's cold. Come inside. What for? To keep listening to how our son idolizes his father-in-law? Lucy sat next to me with a sigh. Henry didn't mean that. He was upset. He'd been drinking. You and I both know that people tell the truth when they're upset and have been drinking, I replied. He just said out loud what he really thinks. You're exaggerating. Exaggerating? I felt the anger rising inside me again. You think it's an exaggeration that our son at our own table implies that another man has been a better father than me? Thomas, please. No, Lucy, I'm sick of it. I spent my whole life breaking my back, working to give them the best. And for what? So they can treat me like a bitter old man they barely tolerate? No one is treating you like that. No? Then why didn't our son even have the decency to tell us in private that he was leaving the country? Why is he taking his father-in-law but didn't even offer us the chance to go? Lucy didn't answer right away. Finally, in a soft voice, she said, maybe because Gerald knows how to support without judging. You've always been too intense with the kids. Her words hurt me more than Henry's. My own wife also thought I had been a bad father. So you think that too, I said, feeling a coldness that had nothing to do with the temperature. 43 years together. And it turns out you've always believed I'm a bad father. I didn't say that, she protested. I'm just saying that sometimes you're too hard, too critical. The kids have always felt like nothing they do is enough for you. I stayed quiet, processing her words. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been too demanding, too inflexible. But I had done it all out of love, out of wanting the best for them. We should go back inside, Lucy said after a while. It's cold, and the family is worried. The family? What family, Lucy? The one that abandons us at the first opportunity? The one that doesn't even consider us in their future plans? For God's sake, Thomas, stop the drama. Nobody is abandoning us. Oh, no? And what about Henry leaving for Spain without even consulting us? Or Sarah, who barely calls twice a month? Or James, who lives in the same city but is too busy to visit? They have their own lives, Thomas. It's normal. No, it's not normal. I stood up, feeling a determination I hadn't felt in years. It's not normal for a son to prefer his father-in-law over his own father. It's not normal for a family to fall apart like this. I walked back to the house with Lucy following me. Everyone was in the living room, talking in low voices. When I entered, there was silence. Henry stood up. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean what I said. I was upset. I looked him in the eyes, those eyes that were so much like mine. Don't apologize for telling the truth, son, I replied calmly. If Gerald has been a better father to you than me, it's because I failed at something, and I accept that. No, Dad, it's not. Let me finish, I interrupted. I've been thinking while I was outside, and you're right. I've been hard, demanding, maybe even unfair. But I did it all because I wanted the best for you. I wanted to protect you from the world, give you the opportunities I never had. I looked around at each of my children. But it seems all I managed to do was push you away from me, and that's something I'll have to live with for the rest of my life. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Finally, Sarah spoke. Dad, nobody is saying you were a bad father. Just different. Different? I repeated with a sad smile. What an elegant way to put it. I headed for the stairs. Excuse me, but I'm tired. It's been a long day. Please, continue enjoying the evening. I went up to my room without looking back. I could hear Lucy apologizing to the guests, saying I was sensitive lately, as if my feelings were childish, something to be tolerated but not taken seriously. I sat on the bed, in the dark, thinking about everything that had happened. Henry's words kept echoing in my head. You're more of a father to me. How had we gotten to this point? At what moment did I lose my family without even realizing it? I didn't sleep that night. As I listened to the guests leave one by one, I made a decision. I couldn't go on like this, pretending everything was fine while my family fell apart around me. It was time for a radical change. When Lucy finally came up to the room, I pretended to be asleep. I didn't want to talk, not that night. I needed time to think, to plan my next move. The next morning, I got up early. The house was quiet. Sarah and her family were staying with us, but they were still asleep. James had gone to his apartment. And Henry. Well, Henry was probably at his house, with Mary and Gerald planning their new life in Spain. I made coffee and sat in the kitchen with a notebook. I started doing calculations, writing down names and phone numbers. By the time Lucy came down, I already had a clear plan in mind. Good morning, she said, surprised to see me up so early. Couldn't you sleep? I slept enough, I lied. I'm just making some notes. About what? About our future. She looked at me with concern. Thomas, about last night. I don't want to talk about last night, I interrupted. What happened? happened. Now we have to look forward. What do you mean? I want to sell the house. Lucy's expression went from concern to disbelief. What? Why? It's too big for just the two of us. The kids don't live here anymore, and now Henry is leaving for Europe. It makes no sense to keep this place. But this is our home. We've lived here our entire married life. We raised our children here. Exactly, I replied, feeling a strange calm. But that stage of our life is over. It's time to start something new. Lucy sat across from me, clearly upset. This is about last night, isn't it? You're hurt by what Henry said and you want to punish us all. This isn't about punishing anyone, Lucy. It's about accepting reality. Our children have their own lives, and we should do the same. But sell the house? Don't you think that's too drastic? Drastic? More drastic than finding out at Christmas dinner that my son is moving to another continent and prefers his father-in-law to me? Lucy sighed. You're being unfair. Maybe, I admitted. But it's my decision. The house is in my name, and I want to sell it. And what about me? Don't I have a say in this? I looked her directly in the eyes. Of course you do. You can come with me, or you can stay. It's your choice. Go with you? Where? I don't know yet. Maybe to Florida or Miami. We always wanted to see the coast. Lucy looked at me like I had gone crazy. Are you serious? You want us to leave our whole life here and move to another city just like that? And what's keeping us here, Lucy? Our children? They already have their own lives. Our friends? Most of them are so busy with their grandkids we barely see them. My business? I left Stephen in charge of that years ago. Lucy didn't answer right away. Finally, in a shaky voice, she said, I need time to think about this. Take all the time you need, I replied, getting up from the table. But my decision is made. I'm going to sell this house and start over, with or without you. I left the kitchen, leaving her alone with her thoughts. I knew I was being harsh, maybe even unfair, but I couldn't pretend anymore. Something inside me had broken the night before, and there was no going back. The following days were tense. Sarah and her family went back to Cleveland without us mentioning anything about our argument. Henry called a couple of times to apologize again, but I refused to talk to him. Not out of resentment, but because I knew if I heard his voice, I might waver in my decision. A week after New Year's, I contacted a real estate agent. The house was put up for sale at the end of January. When Henry found out, he called me furious. What are you doing, Dad? Why are you selling the house without consulting us? Consulting you about what, Henry? It's my house. I can do what I want with it. It's the house where we grew up. Didn't you think about what it means to us? And did you think about what it meant to me when my son preferred his father-in-law? I replied, feeling the wound was still open. We all make our decisions, son. You made yours, and I'm making mine. I hung up without waiting for his response. It was painful, but necessary. I had to follow through with my plan before my courage left me. Lucy and I barely spoke. She refused to accept the sale of the house, and I refused to change my mind. We slept in separate rooms, ate in silence. 43 years of marriage reduced to a cold war that neither of us knew how to end. February arrived, and with it the first offers for the house. A young couple with 2 small children offered a good price. They wanted to move in before the school year started. It was perfect. I signed the preliminary papers without consulting Lucy. When I told her, she exploded. How could you do this without telling me? It's our house, Thomas. We bought it together. The deed is in my name, I replied, hating myself for sounding so cold. And I've already made a decision. And what about me? What am I supposed to do? I already told you. You can come with me, or you can stay. If you decide to stay, I'll leave you half the money from the sale so you can buy something smaller. So this is how it ends? 43 years together and you offer me money as compensation? It's not compensation, Lucy. It's what's fair. Fair? Tears ran down her cheeks. You think it's fair to destroy our family over a comment made in the heat of the moment? Our family was already destroyed before that, I replied sadly. I just didn't want to see it. She looked at me with a mixture of pain and anger. I don't recognize you, Thomas. I don't know who you are anymore. I don't recognize myself either, until I decided to stop being the fool who stays quiet while everyone walks all over him. Lucy shook her head and left the room. That night I heard her talking on the phone with someone, probably Sarah or James. She was crying, telling them what had happened. I didn't care. I had already made my decision. March came with the news that Henry and Mary had moved up their trip. They would leave at the end of the month, not in June, as they had originally planned. I wasn't surprised. They probably wanted to be as far away from me and my madness, as Lucy called it, as possible. The sale of the house was finalized in mid-March. We had until the end of April to move out. I started packing my things, separating what I would take from what I would leave behind. It was amazing how many objects we had accumulated over the years, and how few of them really meant anything to me. One day, while looking through old photographs, I found one of Henry when he was about 7. We were at the beach, he was on my shoulders, both of us smiling at the camera. I remembered that trip. It had been one of the few times I really disconnected from work and dedicated myself completely to my family. Those were happy, simple days. When had we lost that simplicity? When had life become so complicated? At the end of March, I received a call from Sarah. She was worried about me. "Dad, are you sure about what you're doing? Mom is devastated. Your mother can come with me if she wants," I replied. "The decision is hers." "And where will you go?" "To a small coastal town in Florida. I already found a little house by the sea." "Florida? But Dad, that's in the middle of nowhere." "Exactly. Far from everything and everyone. It's just what I need right now. Dad, please reconsider. This isn't the solution." "And what is the solution, Sarah? Stay here watching my family drift further and further away? Watching my son prefer another man as his father? No, thank you. I'd rather start over." Sarah sighed. "At least talk to Henry before he leaves. He's leaving this Saturday." "There's nothing to say." "Dad, please, he's moving to another continent. If you don't see him now, when will you?" She was right, of course. Despite everything, Henry was still my son. I couldn't let him go without saying goodbye. "All right. Tell him to come to the house tomorrow. I'll be here all day." Henry arrived the next day, alone. We sat in the backyard, the same place I had been on Christmas night. The house already looked different, with boxes everywhere and empty spaces where furniture used to be. "So you're really doing it," he said, looking around. "You're really selling the house." "It's already sold," I replied. "We're moving out at the end of April." Henry shook his head, disbelieving. "I can't believe you're doing this just because of what I said at Christmas." "It was a stupid comment, Dad." I was angry. I drank too much. "It's not just because of that, Henry," I interrupted. "It's because of everything. Because of how we've been drifting apart year after year. Because of how you and your siblings have made your lives without barely including us. Because of how we found out about your moving plans in the middle of Christmas dinner, as if we were just acquaintances. That's not fair, isn't it? Tell me something, Henry. If you really considered me important in your life, wouldn't you have told me your plans sooner? Wouldn't you have at least considered asking me what I thought? Things aren't that simple, Dad." "They never are," I admitted. "But sometimes decisions are." And I made mine. Henry ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he had inherited from me. "And Mom, is she okay with this? Your mother can decide for herself. I've told her she can come with me or stay. And if she decides to stay, then we'll go our separate ways." Henry looked at me with a mixture of shock and disappointment. "Just like that? 43 years of marriage and you're throwing it all away." "I wasn't the one who started throwing things away, son," I replied sadly. "You all did, little by little, year after year. I'm just finishing the job." We were silent for a moment. Finally, Henry spoke in a softer voice. "Where will you go?" "To a coastal town in Florida. I bought a small house by the sea." "Florida? But, Dad, it's so far." "That's the idea." Henry sighed. "At least give me your address and your phone number. I want to be able to contact you." "What for? To call me twice a year and ask me how I am while you continue with your life in Spain? Dad, please don't make this harder." I looked him in the eyes, those eyes so much like mine, and I felt my heart clench. "Despite everything, you are still my son, my firstborn. I'll send you my address when I'm settled," I finally conceded, "and my number will stay the same." Henry nodded, relieved. "When are you leaving for Spain?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "This Saturday. The flight leaves at 11 in the morning." "And Mary? How is she with all this?" "She's excited but also nervous. The pregnancy is going well, by the way. The baby is due in June. A grandchild I would probably never know, or at least I wouldn't see grow up." Congratulate her for me, I said, feeling a lump in my throat. Don't you want to come to the airport to see us off? I don't think that's a good idea. Henry nodded, understanding. We'll miss you, Dad. No, you won't, I replied with a sad smile. You'll be too busy with your new lives. And that's okay. It's how it should be. We stood up and walked to the door. Before leaving, Henry hugged me. It was a long, desperate hug, as if we both knew it might be the last. I love you, Dad, he said, his voice breaking. Despite everything, I love you. And I love you, son, I replied, feeling the tears threatening to spill. Take care of yourself. I watched him drive away, knowing it would probably be years before I saw him again. A part of me wanted to run after him, to tell him it was all a mistake, that I wasn't going anywhere. But another part, the one that had taken control since Christmas, knew it was too late to turn back. That night, Lucy came to the room where I was sleeping now. She sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes red from crying. I spoke with Sarah, she said. She's coming next week with the kids. I'm glad. I also spoke with James. He's very worried about you. He doesn't need to be. I'm fine. Lucy looked at me sadly. No, you're not. None of us are. I didn't answer. What could I say? She was right, of course. None of us were fine. Our family was falling apart before our very eyes, and I was partly responsible. Thomas, please reconsider, Lucy pleaded. It's not too late to change your mind. The house is already sold, Lucy, and the one in Florida is already bought. There's no turning back. There's always a turning back if you really want to. I looked her in the eyes, those eyes that I had fallen in love with over 4 decades ago. And you? Have you made your decision yet? Lucy looked down. It's not that simple. Of course it is. Either you come with me or you stay. There's no middle ground. And what about our children, our grandchildren? They have their own lives, Lucy, just as we should have ours. And if I don't want to choose, if I want my husband and my children, then you'll have to convince your children to include me in their lives, because I'm done begging for their attention. Lucy stood up, clearly frustrated. You're a stubborn man, Thomas. You always have been. And you're a pushover, Lucy. Always accepting what you're given without demanding more. She left without answering, closing the door harder than necessary. I knew I was being unfair, but I couldn't stop myself. Something had broken inside me, and now all that was left was to move forward, no matter who I hurt along the way. The following days passed in a blur of activity. Packing, donating, throwing things away. It was amazing how much stuff we had accumulated over the years, and how little I really needed. By the time Sarah arrived with the kids, the house looked more like a warehouse than a home. Sarah stayed for a week. She tried to convince me to change my mind, but I held firm. The kids noticed the tension, especially Emily, who at 7 was more perceptive than she seemed. Why are you sad, Grandpa? She asked me one day, while we were playing in the garden. I'm not sad, Princess. I'm just thinking. About what? About the sea. I'm going to live by the sea soon, you know? Her eyes lit up. Really? Can I come visit you and swim with the fish? Of course you can, I replied, knowing it would probably never happen. You'll have your own room waiting for you. That night, after putting the kids to bed, Sarah came to talk to me. Dad, I've been thinking about all this. And? I think I understand why you're doing it. I looked at her, surprised. Of all my children, Sarah had always been the most understanding, but I still didn't expect her to support me in this. Really? Yes. I don't agree with the way you're doing it, but I understand the reason. You feel replaced, like you're not important in our lives anymore. It's more than that, Sarah. It's like my whole life has been a mistake. Like everything I did, all the sacrifices were for nothing. That's not true, Dad. Look at me, at Henry, at James. We're good people with careers, families. That's thanks to you and Mom. Maybe, or maybe you would have achieved the same thing without my rigidity, without my demands. Sarah took my hand. Every parent does the best they can with the tools they have. You gave us stability, security, education. Could you have been more affectionate? Maybe. But no one can deny that you loved us, in your own way. Her words touched me, but they didn't change my decision. The next day when they left, I felt like they were taking another piece of my heart with them. April came with the news that Henry and Mary were already settled in Barcelona. Gerald had gone with them, just as planned. They sent me pictures of their new apartment, with views of the city. They looked happy, excited about their new life. I was happy for them despite everything. The moving date was approaching, and Lucy still hadn't made a decision. We continued to live like strangers in the same house, each busy with our own preparations. I already had everything ready, my clothes, some books, a few photographs. Everything I needed fit into 2 large suitcases. One night, as we were eating dinner in silence, Lucy finally spoke. "I've made a decision." I looked up from my plate, expectant. "I'm listening. I'm not going with you to Florida." Even though I suspected it, her words hurt more than I expected. "I understand. But I'm not staying here either," she continued. "Sarah invited me to live with her in Cleveland, at least for a while. She wants me to be close when her 3rd baby is born. She was pregnant? I didn't know. She told you the day she came. I guess you were too busy with your plans to listen." The comment stung, but I said nothing. She was right, after all. I had been so absorbed in my own pain that I had barely paid attention to what was happening around me. "I'm happy for her," I finally said. "She'll be a good grandmother. You could be a good grandfather, too, if you gave yourself the chance." "Maybe in another life," I replied, getting up from the table. "In this one, it seems it's already too late." The last few days in the house were surreal. Lucy packed her things. I packed mine. The remaining furniture was sold or donated. By the time moving day arrived, the house was practically empty, as if we had never lived there. The morning of my departure, Lucy and I met in the kitchen for the last time. She was leaving for Cleveland the next day. "I guess this is goodbye," she said, her voice trembling. "I guess so." We looked at each other in silence. 43 years of marriage reduced to this awkward moment. "I wish you the best, Thomas," she finally said. "I hope you find what you're looking for. You too, Lucy." I wanted to say something more, something that expressed everything I was feeling, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, I stepped forward and hugged her. It was a brief, almost formal hug, nothing like the passionate embraces we used to share in our youth. "Take care," I said, pulling away. "You too." I grabbed my suitcases and walked out without looking back. The taxi that would take me to the airport was already waiting. As I loaded my things into the trunk, I took one last look at the house where I had spent most of my adult life. So many memories, so many moments, and now it was all behind me. The trip to the coastal town was long. First a flight to the city, then a taxi down winding roads to my final destination. When I finally arrived, it was already getting dark. The small house I had bought was exactly as I had seen in the photos. 2 bedrooms, a living dining room, a small kitchen, and most importantly, a terrace with a direct view of the ocean. I left my suitcases at the entrance and walked to the water's edge. The beach was almost deserted at that hour. I took off my shoes and let the waves wash over my feet. The water was warm, perfect. In the distance, the sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky red and orange. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. There was no one here to judge me, no one who expected anything from me. Just me, the sea, and the sky. A new life was beginning. A life without the baggage of the past. As I watched the sun sink into the ocean, I thought about my family. About Lucy, who at this moment was probably alone in our empty house. About Henry, starting a new life in Barcelona with a baby on the way. About Sarah, expecting her 3rd child in Cleveland. About James, always so mysterious, so distant. I would miss them, no doubt. Did I regret my decision? That remained to be seen. For now, I just wanted to feel the sand beneath my feet, listen to the murmur of the waves, and let the sea breeze carry away the pain I had held for so long. A star appeared in the sky. Then another, and another. Night was falling on my new town, and with it, the first day of my new life. A life I had chosen for myself, for better or for worse. I went back to the house and started unpacking. I had bought the property furnished, so I didn't need much else. I placed a few photographs in the living room. One of my parents, one of my siblings, one of my wedding with Lucy, and one of each of my children when they were little. The past wouldn't disappear completely, but now I had the chance to build a different future. That night, I slept to the sound of the waves as my lullaby. And for the first time in months, I didn't dream of Christmas, or my son's hurtful words, or the empty house I had left behind. I dreamed of the sea, immense and free, calling me to an adventure that was just beginning. The first few days in my new town were like a dream. I woke up with the sun streaming through the window, had breakfast on the terrace watching the ocean, and spent the afternoons walking on the beach. It was a simple life, without schedules or obligations. Exactly what I needed. The town was small but vibrant. Fishermen heading out at dawn, tourists enjoying the sun, surfers riding the waves. I watched it all from a distance, without getting too involved. I hadn't come here to make friends, but to find myself. One morning, while having coffee at a small place on the main beach, the owner approached my table. "Another coffee, sir?" he asked with a friendly smile. "Yes, please." "You're new around here, aren't you?" "I arrived a week ago," I replied, not very interested in talking. "Vacation?" "No. I moved here for good." The man, who must have been in his 50s, looked at me curiously. "It's not often someone your age comes to live alone here." "I suppose not," I said, hoping he would take the hint and leave me alone. But instead of leaving, he pulled up a chair and sat across from me. He was wearing a faded t-shirt with the cafe's logo, and his skin was weathered by the sun. "My name is Robert Suarez," he said, extending his hand. "This cafe has been mine for 20 years. Out of courtesy, I shook his hand. "Thomas Aguirre. Where are you from, Mr. Thomas?" "From Chicago." "Ah, a city slicker," he smiled. "I'm from there, too. I left after the big '89 quake. Never went back." Despite my initial resistance, the conversation flowed naturally. Robert had been an accountant in the city, but after losing his apartment in the earthquake, he decided to change his life. He sold what little he had left, bought a ticket to Florida, and the rest was history. It was tough at first, he told me. I didn't know anyone, had no money. I worked as a waiter, a kitchen helper, even as a tour guide, though I barely knew the area. "And how did you end up with this cafe?" "The old owner was an American who got tired of the heat," he laughed. "He sold it to me for almost nothing, on the condition that I keep the name. The Last Cafe. I always thought he was a strange man, but the tourists find it poetic. When I finished my second coffee, I stood up to pay. "It's on the house," Robert said. "A welcome to the town. Thanks, but I'd rather pay." "As you wish." He took my money without insisting. "But just know you have a friend here if you need one." I nodded without committing and left. I hadn't come here to make friends, I repeated to myself. I had come to be alone, to think, to heal. However, over the following weeks I found myself returning to the Last Cafe almost every day. At first, just for the coffee, which was excellent. Then, for the company. Robert was a good conversationalist, but he also knew how to respect silence. He never asked too much, never pushed when I changed the subject or seemed reluctant to talk about my past. One day, as we were enjoying the sunset from the cafe's terrace, Robert asked me, "Don't you miss your family, Mr. Thomas?" The question took me by surprise. We had talked about many things in the past weeks, but never about my family. "Sometimes," I answered honestly. "But it's complicated. Families always are." He nodded, not pressing further. We sat in silence, watching the sun sink into the horizon, tinting the sky orange and purple. Suddenly I felt the need to talk, to share what had brought me here. "My son said his father-in-law was a better father than him," I blurted out. At Christmas dinner in front of the whole family, Robert looked at me but said nothing, inviting me to continue. "I have 3 children. The oldest, Henry, moved to Barcelona a few months ago. He took his father-in-law with him but barely even told us. The middle one, Sarah, lives in Cleveland with her kids. And the youngest, James, lives in Chicago, but he's always too busy to visit." "Sounds familiar," Robert commented with a sad smile. "My 2 daughters live in Canada. I haven't seen them in person in 5 years. Doesn't it hurt?" "Every day, but that's life. Kids grow up. They make their own lives. I worked my whole life to give them the best," I said, feeling the old bitterness rise up. "I broke my back so they would never want for anything, so they could study in good schools, so they would have opportunities I never had. And for what? For my son to tell me his father-in-law was a better father than him." Robert sipped his coffee before answering. "You know what I've learned after 20 years of serving coffee to strangers? That everyone has a story, and there's almost always more to it than meets the eye." "What do you mean? I mean, maybe your son wasn't comparing who was a better father, but different styles of being a father. Maybe what he likes about the other man is something you didn't give him, but you gave him other things that were just as valuable." His words made me think. Was it possible that Henry wasn't rejecting me completely, but just expressing that he needed something different from me, something I hadn't known how to give? Anyway, Robert continued, if you sold your house and came all the way here just for that, it seems to me there's something deeper going on. How do you know I sold my house? I didn't, he smiled. You just confirmed it for me. I couldn't help but smile too. The old fox had caught me. You're right, I admitted. It wasn't just because of what Henry said. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. I had been feeling for a long time that my family was drifting away, that they didn't need me anymore, or worse, that I was in their way. And your wife? Did you leave her behind too? I gave her a choice. She could come with me or stay. She chose to go to Cleveland with our daughter. Robert nodded thoughtfully. 43 years of marriage, I added, and we threw it all away like it meant nothing. Do you keep in touch? Not since I left, I admitted. It's been almost 2 months. And your children? Henry is in Barcelona. He sent me a message when his baby was born 3 weeks ago. A girl, Valentina. My first granddaughter from that side. Sarah calls me every week to tell me how her pregnancy is going. And James? Well, he's always been more reserved. He sent me an email asking if I needed anything. That doesn't sound like a family that has forgotten you, Robert commented. It's just courtesy, I replied, though deep down I knew that wasn't true. That night, when I got home, I looked at the photographs I had placed in the living room. My family, my previous life. Had I made a mistake by running away like this? Had I overreacted? Doubt was beginning to settle in my mind, undermining the determination that had brought me here. I picked up my phone and checked my messages. I had several from Sarah that I hadn't answered. One from James asking how I was, and the one from Henry with the photo of little Valentina. I lingered on that image. A tiny baby with a wrinkled reddish face wrapped in a pink blanket. My granddaughter, whom I would probably never meet in person. I felt a lump in my throat. What was I doing? Did I really want to spend the rest of my life away from my family? From my grandchildren? All because of pride. All because I had felt hurt. Before I could change my mind, I dialed Lucy's number. It rang several times before she answered, her voice sleepy. Thomas, is that you? Yes, it's me, I replied, feeling my heart pounding. Did I wake you? It's 2 a.m. Of course you woke me. I'm sorry. I didn't realize the time. An awkward silence settled between us. Are you okay? She finally asked. Yes, I'm fine. I just wanted to know how you are. I'm fine. Sarah and the kids are treating me like a queen, and the pregnancy is going great. We're in the 7th month already. I'm glad. Another silence. 43 years together, and now we could barely hold a basic conversation. How is the town? She asked, making an effort. Beautiful. The beach is just steps from my house. The sea is warm. The people are friendly. Sounds nice. It is. I wanted to tell her I missed her, that the house felt empty without her, that I regretted putting her in that impossible situation, but the words wouldn't come. Well, it's late, she finally said. I should go back to sleep. Yes, of course. Sorry for calling at this hour. It's okay. Take care, Thomas. You too, Lucy. I hung up, feeling an enormous void. I hadn't managed to say anything I really wanted to say. Pride, that old enemy, was still tying my tongue. The following days were difficult. The conversation with Lucy had stirred up feelings I thought were buried. I missed her, much more than I was willing to admit. I also missed my children, even the small daily conflicts that used to seem so irritating. One morning, while I was having breakfast alone on my terrace, my phone rang. It was an unknown number with an international prefix. Hello? Dad? Henry's voice sounded distant, with a slight echo. Henry, I replied, surprised. How are you? Good, good. And you? Good, too. How's the baby? Growing fast. She's not that little wrinkled shrimp from the photo anymore. I smiled in spite of myself. She looks like you did when you were a baby. Mom says that, too. The mention of Lucy brought another awkward silence. Dad, I'm calling because, well, we're planning Valentina's baptism for September, and we wanted to know if you could come. The invitation took me completely by surprise. To Barcelona? Yes. It would be the first week of September. I know it's a long trip, but I'll go, I replied without thinking. Of course I'll go. Really? The surprise in his voice was evident. I thought I would have to convince you. She's my granddaughter, Henry. Of course I want to be there. Great. I could hear the smile in his voice. I'll tell Mary. She'll be thrilled. Is the whole family coming? That's the plan. Mom already confirmed. She's coming with Sarah and the kids. James, too, although only for a weekend because he has an important project. A full family reunion, I murmured, taking in the idea. Yes. It's been a long time since the last one. Since Christmas, I thought. But I didn't say it. I didn't want to dredge up that memory. Not now that things seem to be getting better. I'll send you the details by email, Henry continued. The flight, where you'll stay, all of that. Thanks, son. Dad. His voice suddenly turned serious. There's something I want to tell you. I'm listening. I'm sorry for what I said at Christmas. It was stupid and unfair. You've been a great father, in your own way. Different from Gerald, yes, but not worse. His words touched me deeply. Thank you, son. I'm also sorry for how I reacted. It was excessive. Maybe we both needed this time apart to appreciate what we had. Maybe. After hanging up, I stared at the ocean, processing what had just happened. I was going to Barcelona. I would see my family again. I would meet my granddaughter. And most importantly, I would see Lucy again after nearly 3 months apart. That afternoon, I told Robert about Henry's call. That's great news, he said, wiping down the cafe bar. You're excited. Nervous is the word, I admitted. A lot has happened between us. But it's a start, he encouraged me. Sometimes that's all we need. And if things don't go well, if we're still where we left off, Mr. Thomas, Robert looked at me seriously. In my experience, when a family wants to get back together, it's because they're willing to try again. Nobody goes to all that trouble if there's no hope. His words comforted me. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was the chance we all needed to heal old wounds. The following weeks flew by. Henry sent me all the information as promised. I would fly to Barcelona on September 3rd. I would stay in an apartment they had rented near their house for the whole family. And the baptism would be on Sunday, the 8th. I would be with them for a whole week. I also received calls from Sarah and James, both excited about the family reunion. Even Lucy called me a couple of times to coordinate the trip. Our conversations were still a bit strained, but at least we were talking, which was progress. As the date approached, my nerves grew. What if it was all a facade? What if they were still resentful of me? What if Lucy had met someone else in Cleveland? The thought tormented me, even though I had no reason to believe it was true. One morning, as I was walking on the beach, I came across a small chapel by the sea. I had never been particularly religious, but I felt the urge to go inside. The interior was simple. Some wooden pews, a simple altar, and an image of Mary. I sat in the back pew, taking in the calm of the place. "Can I help you with something?" a voice asked from behind me. I turned to find an elderly priest, with white hair and a kind face. "I was just resting," I replied. "I hope I'm not disturbing." "Not at all. The house of God is open to everyone." He sat next to me, respecting my space. "You seem worried, son." "I'm about to reunite with my family after a difficult separation," I admitted, surprising myself by opening up to a stranger. "I don't know what to expect." The priest nodded, understanding. "Fear of the unknown is natural. But remember that where there is love, there is always hope. And if love isn't enough, if the damage is too deep, true love is always enough," he replied with conviction. "It might take time, patience, work, but in the end, love heals all wounds." It sounds simple when you say it like that. "Simple isn't always easy," he smiled. "But it's worth trying, don't you think?" I stayed in the chapel for a while after the priest left. His words, though simple, had given me something to think about. Was I willing to really try? To lower my defenses? To risk being hurt again? For the chance to get my family back? The answer was yes. As painful as our separation had been, as hurt as I had felt, I still loved them. Lucy, my children, my grandchildren, they were my life, my reason for being. I had needed this distance to realize that. On the day of my departure, Robert insisted on driving me to the airport. "It's not necessary," I protested. "I can take a taxi." "No way. Friends don't let friends take taxis to the airport." During the drive, we talked about nothing in particular. The cafe, the town, the storms that were coming with the hurricane season. We avoided talking about my trip, as if both of us feared that putting my expectations into words might somehow ruin them. When we got to the airport, Robert helped me with my suitcase and walked me to the security gate. "Good luck, Mr. Thomas," he said, giving me a hug. "I hope to see you back soon." "Thanks for everything, Robert," I replied, moved by his friendship. "I'll be back, whatever the outcome. I know. The sea always calls back those who have known its peace." The flight to the main city was short, barely an hour. Then I had to wait 3 hours for my connection to Madrid, and from there, another one to Barcelona. In total, almost 20 hours of travel. More than enough time to doubt, to regret, to imagine every possible scenario. When we finally landed in Barcelona, I was exhausted but too nervous to really feel it. I went through immigration, collected my suitcase, and headed for the exit. My heart was pounding as I scanned the crowd for a familiar face. And then I saw him. Henry was there holding a sign that said Mr. Thomas Aguirre. Next to him was Mary holding a small bundle in her arms that could only be Valentina. I froze for a second, taking in the sight. My son looked older, or maybe just tired. He had dark circles under his eyes, probably from sleepless nights with the baby. But he was smiling, a genuine smile that lit up his face. I walked toward them, feeling my legs tremble slightly. "Dad," Henry said when he saw me, dropping the sign to hug me. The hug was long, strong, as if we were both afraid the other might disappear. When we separated, Henry's eyes were moist, and I suspect mine were too. "Welcome to Barcelona," he said, trying to sound casual. "Thanks for having me," I replied, just as awkwardly. Mary approached with the baby in her arms. "Mr. Thomas, it's so good to see you." "It's good to see you too, Mary," I said, kissing her cheek. "You look great." "Tired, but happy," she smiled. "Do you want to meet your granddaughter?" She gently pulled back the blanket to reveal the baby's face. She was sleeping peacefully, oblivious to all the family drama surrounding her. She had dark hair like Henry, and his same thick eyebrows. She was perfect. "She's beautiful," I murmured, feeling an emotion I hadn't experienced since my own children were born. "She looks like you, Henry." "Everyone says that," he replied with pride, "though she has Mary's eyes when she opens them." "Can I? Can I hold her?" "Of course." Mary carefully passed the baby to me. I took her in my arms, surprised by how light she was. She weighed almost nothing. Her wrinkled face, her tiny hands, her soft breathing. Everything about her awakened a protective instinct in me that I thought I had forgotten. "Hello, Valentina," I whispered. "I'm your grandpa." As if she had heard me, the baby briefly opened her eyes. She looked at me without really seeing me, and went back to sleep. It was enough to make my heart melt completely. "Let's go home," Henry said, taking my suitcase. "You must be tired." The apartment they had rented for the family was spacious and bright, overlooking a nearby park. It had 3 bedrooms, one for Sarah and her family, one for James, and the third for Lucy and me. That surprised me. "Your mother and I are sharing a room?" "It was her idea," Henry explained. "She said it didn't make sense to spend money on another room when you've always slept together. But if it makes you uncomfortable, I can arrange something." "No, it's fine," I replied, though I wasn't sure how I felt about it. That first night was quiet. I had dinner with Henry and Mary, got to know little Valentina better, and we talked about how they had adapted to life in Barcelona. Gerald wasn't there. He had gone to Portugal with some friends and would be back just in time for the baptism. The next morning, James and Sarah arrived with her family. The reunions were emotional, especially with my grandchildren, who ran to hug me as if not a day had passed since we last saw each other. "Grandpa, is it true you live by the sea?" Emily asked, now almost 8. "Yes, Princess. My house is just steps from the beach. Can we come visit? Mom says there are colorful fish." "Anytime. I have a room waiting for you, just like I promised." The only one missing was Lucy. According to Sarah, she would arrive that afternoon. As the hour approached, my nerves grew. What would it be like to see her after so long? What would I say? What would she feel? When she finally arrived, we were all in the living room. The door opened, and there she was, her hair shorter than I remembered, but otherwise the same as always. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. "Lucy," I said, standing up. Thomas, she replied with a small smile. We didn't run to hug each other like in the movies. There were no tears or dramatic declarations, just two people who once loved each other, meeting again after a painful separation. You look good, I said, not knowing what else to say. You too. The sea suits you. The atmosphere was awkward, tense. Our children noticed and discreetly began to leave the room with various excuses, leaving us alone. When the door closed behind the last of them, we stood in silence, looking at each other. How have you been? I finally asked. Good. Busy with the preparations for Sarah's baby. And you? Good too. Life in the town is quiet. Another silence. So many things to say, and neither of us knew where to start. Thomas, I, Lucy, I wanted. We spoke at the same time and stopped. Uncomfortable. You first, I said. Lucy took a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot about us these past few months. About what went wrong. About what we could have done differently. Me too. And I've come to the conclusion that we both made mistakes. Me, for not supporting you more when you felt replaced. You, for making such drastic decisions without really consulting me. I nodded, recognizing the truth in her words. I'm sorry, I said. I acted on impulse, out of pain. I didn't think about how it would affect you. And I'm sorry I didn't listen to you when you were trying to tell me how you felt. I always thought you were exaggerating, that it was just your hurt pride. I didn't understand how deep your pain was. We looked at each other, really looked at each other for the first time in a long time. What do we do now? I asked. I don't know, she answered honestly. But I think being here together is a good start. That night, when we went to bed, the situation was awkward. The room had a double bed. There was no alternative. I can sleep on the sofa, I offered. Don't be ridiculous, Lucy replied. We slept together for 43 years. We can manage for one more week. We lay down on our respective sides of the bed, keeping a careful distance. We turned off the lights and stared at the ceiling in the dark. Thomas, Lucy said after a while, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy in Florida? The question took me by surprise. Was I happy? I had peace. I had tranquility. I had the sea. But happiness? I don't know, I answered honestly. Sometimes I think so. Other times. Other times what? Other times I feel very lonely. Lucy was quiet for a moment. I feel lonely sometimes too, she admitted. Even surrounded by Sarah and the kids, there are moments when I miss you so much. Her words touch something deep inside me. I miss you too, Lucy. More than I want to admit. In the darkness, I felt her hand searching for mine. I took it, lacing our fingers together like we used to when we were young. Do you think there's still hope for us? She asked, her voice trembling. I want to believe so, I replied. If you want to too. We didn't say anything else that night, but we slept with our hands intertwined. A small gesture, but full of meaning. The following days were a mix of family moments and private conversations with Lucy. Little by little, we started breaking the ice, rediscovering the connection we once had. We visited the city together, saw the places where Henry and Mary had built their new life, and spent time with little Valentina. The Friday before the baptism, Henry took us to a restaurant by the sea. While the others were ordering, he pulled me aside. Dad, there's something I need to tell you. His tone worried me. What's wrong? Gerald got back from Portugal yesterday. I felt a pang of discomfort. I hadn't thought much about Gerald during these days, but his name still triggered a certain rejection in me. He's coming to dinner tonight, Henry continued. I wanted to warn you so it wouldn't be awkward. It's fine, I said, trying to sound casual. He's Valentina's grandfather. He has every right to be here. Henry looked at me with concern. Are you sure you're okay with this? It's been a long time, son. Wounds heal. I wasn't being completely honest. The idea of seeing Gerald unsettled me, but I didn't want to ruin the harmony we had achieved these past few days. That night, when Gerald arrived at the apartment, everyone was already at the table. I stood up to greet him, extending my hand. Gerald, welcome. He seemed surprised by my gesture, but he shook my hand firmly. Thomas, good to see you. You look good. You too. Dinner proceeded in a surprisingly cordial atmosphere. Gerald talked about his trip to Portugal. I talked about my life in Florida. Not once was Christmas mentioned, or the words that had triggered everything. After dinner, while the others were cleaning up, Gerald invited me out onto the balcony. "A cigarette?" he offered, pulling out a pack. "I haven't smoked in 20 years," I replied. "But thanks." He lit one for himself, taking a deep drag. "You know, Thomas, I never had the chance to apologize for what happened at Christmas." "You don't have to apologize. It wasn't your fault." "It was partly," he admitted. "I should have stepped in when Henry said that. I should have clarified things. But I stayed quiet, and that was almost like supporting him. I didn't know what to say." He was right. His silence had been a form of complicity. "The truth is," he continued, "I've always admired you as a father. You raised 3 wonderful children. You gave them education, values. I barely managed to raise my daughter alone after Clara died." His words surprised me. Admiration? It was the last thing I expected. "I wasn't a perfect father," I said, feeling the need to be honest. "I was too strict, too distant at times." "No father is," he replied, exhaling smoke. "We all do the best we can with the tools we have." Those words sounded familiar. Sarah had said something similar to me months ago. "What I mean is," Gerald continued, "I'm sorry if my relationship with Henry made you feel replaced. It was never my intention to replace you. I was just trying to be a support for him, just as you were, in your own way." I looked at him with new eyes. This man, whom I had considered almost a rival, was extending an olive branch. "Thank you, Gerald. That means a lot to hear." We stood in silence for a moment, looking out at the lights of Barcelona. "You know," he said finally, "I think Henry needs both his grandfathers in his life. And Valentina does too." "I agree," I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. When we went back inside, Lucy looked at me questioningly. I smiled at her, letting her know everything was fine. She seemed relieved. Sunday was the big day, Valentina's baptism. The ceremony was intimate, just family and a few close friends of Henry and Mary. Little Valentina, dressed in a beautiful white gown that had been in Mary's family for generations, behaved surprisingly well. She barely cried when the water touched her head. During the ceremony, I found myself watching my family. Henry holding his daughter with pride, Mary radiant by his side, Sarah with her 7-month belly smiling emotionally, James more relaxed than I had seen him in years, the kids restless but happy, Gerald discreet but present, and Lucy beautiful as always, with tears of joy in her eyes. In that moment, I realized something fundamental. This was my life, not the house in Chicago, not the business I had built, not even my retirement in Florida. My life was right here, in these people who, despite everything, were still my family. After the ceremony, we went to a restaurant to celebrate. During lunch, Henry stood up to make a toast. "I want to thank everyone for being here today," he said, raising his glass. "Especially Valentina's grandparents, who have traveled from far away to share this day with us." He looked at Lucy and me, then at Gerald. "A few months ago, our family went through difficult times," he continued. "Hurtful words were said. Drastic decisions were made. There was pain, distance, even a rupture. But today, we are here, together again, celebrating the life of this little one who has brought us back together." He lifted Valentina in his arms. "This baby knows nothing of past grudges, of hurt pride. She only knows she has a family that loves her, and that's all that matters. So I toast to her, to us, to second chances." "To second chances," we all repeated, raising our glasses. I felt Lucy's hand find mine under the table. I took it, squeezing it gently. Our eyes met, and I saw in her eyes the same thing I felt in my heart. Hope. That night in our room, Lucy and I talked late, not about the past, but about the future. "What do we do when we go back?" she asked. "Will you stay in Florida? Will I stay in Cleveland? What do you want to do?" I asked her. "I want to be with you," she replied without hesitation. "These months apart have made me realize that, despite everything, you're still the man I want to spend the rest of my life with." Her words moved me deeply. "I want to be with you too, Lucy. The house in Florida is beautiful, but it's empty without you." "Then I'll go with you," she decided. "After Sarah's baby is born, I'll move to Florida." "Are you sure? It's a big change. Far from the kids, the grandkids. We can visit them, they can visit us. And now with technology, we can see each other on video every day if we want." She was right. The world was smaller now than when we were young. Distance no longer meant total separation. Besides, she added with a mischievous smile, I always wanted to live by the sea. It will be like a permanent vacation. I hugged her, feeling a happiness I hadn't experienced in a long time. I love you, Lucy. I've always loved you. And I love you, Thomas. Even when you're a stubborn old man. We kissed, rediscovering each other's taste, the familiarity of our bodies after so many years together. That night, for the first time in months, we slept in each other's arms, just like we used to before everything got complicated. The day of our departure came all too soon. James was the first to leave, with promises to visit Florida on his next vacation. Lucy would return to Cleveland with Sarah, and I would fly back to the city to catch my connection to my town. At the airport, we said goodbye to Henry, Mary, and little Valentina. Thanks for coming, Dad, Henry said, hugging me. It meant a lot to us. Thanks for inviting me, I replied, emotional. For giving me this chance to meet my granddaughter, to reconnect with all of you. Next time we'll come visit you, Mary promised. We want Valentina to know the States, her roots. We'll be waiting for you, Lucy said, holding the baby one last time. Take good care of this princess in the meantime. We said our goodbyes with hugs and some tears, but this time they were tears of joy, not pain. We knew we would see each other again, that this wasn't an end, but a new beginning. Before heading to our separate gates, Lucy and I stopped for a moment. I'll see you in 2 months, she said, caressing my cheek. Take care of yourself in the meantime. You too, I replied, kissing her softly. Give Sarah a hug for me, and tell her I'll be waiting for pictures of my new grandson as soon as he's born. I will. We hugged one last time, knowing that even though we were physically separating, our hearts were still united. During the flight back, as I watched the clouds from the window, I reflected on everything that had happened in these months. A hurtful comment at a Christmas dinner had triggered a family crisis that almost destroyed us. I had sold my house, abandoned my wife, fled to a distant town, all because of hurt pride, because of pain. But sometimes, crises are necessary. Sometimes we need to break in order to rebuild. Stronger, wiser. My family wasn't perfect. It never had been. We all made mistakes. We all hurt each other at some point. But the love that bound us was stronger than our flaws. When I arrived in Florida, Robert was waiting for me at the airport, just as he had promised. How did it go, Mr. Thomas? He asked as he loaded my suitcase into his car. Better than I expected, I replied with a smile. Much better. During the drive, I told him everything. The reunion with Henry, little Valentina, the reconciliation with Lucy, even the conversation with Gerald. I'm happy for you, he said sincerely. You deserve it. Oh, and get ready to meet my wife, I added. She's moving here in 2 months. Really? That's great news, yes it is. When we arrived at my house, the sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky orange and purple, exactly like that first night. But this time, as I watched the spectacle from my terrace, I didn't feel the loneliness that had accompanied me for months. Instead, there was hope, anticipation for the future that was to come. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Lucy. I miss you already. Tell me how our new home is. I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest. Beautiful, as always, I replied. But much better now that I know you'll be here soon. I attached a photo of the sunset and added, I'm waiting for you to watch this together every day for the rest of our lives. Her reply came quickly. I can't wait. I love you, my stubborn old man. And I love you, my love. Always. The following weeks passed in a blur of activity. I fixed up the house for Lucy's arrival, adding feminine touches I knew she would like. New curtains, plants, a hammock on the terrace for afternoon naps. I also expanded the garden, planting the flowers she had always wanted. I received calls and messages almost daily, from Lucy, from Sarah, whose baby, a boy, was born in early October, from James, who finally introduced me to his partner, a young architect named Daniel, and even from Henry, who sent me photos and videos of Valentina almost every day. A month after my return, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Gerald. He told me he had decided to return to the States. Barcelona was beautiful, he wrote, but he missed his country, his culture, his language. Henry and Mary had understood his decision and supported him. He ended the letter by saying he hoped we could be friends now, that life was too short to hold grudges. I replied immediately, assuring him there were no hard feelings on my part, that I perfectly understood the nostalgia for home, something I sometimes felt myself, despite loving my new life in Florida, and that the doors of my house were open to him if he ever wanted to visit the coast. Finally, the day I had been waiting for arrived. I went to pick Lucy up at the airport, my heart pounding with anticipation. When I saw her walk through the arrival gate, with her suitcase and a radiant smile, I knew I had made the right decision in giving our love a second chance. "Welcome home," I said, hugging her. "I am home," she replied, kissing me. "Wherever you are, that's my home." The drive to the town was filled with chatter and laughter. I showed her the places I had discovered, the hidden beaches, the local restaurants, the viewpoints with spectacular views. She took it all in enthusiastically, asking questions, commenting on how beautiful everything was. When we finally arrived at the house, I took her straight to the terrace, where the ocean stretched out in all its immensity. "What do you think?" I asked, nervous for her approval. "It's perfect," she replied, with tears of happiness in her eyes. "Absolutely perfect." That night, as we had dinner on the terrace under the stars, with the sound of the waves as background music, Lucy looked at me seriously. "You know, Thomas, all of this has made me think." "About what?" "About how fragile happiness is, how easy it is to lose it over pride, over not knowing how to communicate." I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "But also," she continued, "about how resilient true love is, how it can survive the fiercest storms if both people are willing to fight for it." "You're right," I said, taking her hand. "And I promise you that I will fight for us every day for the rest of my life." "I promise you too," she replied, squeezing my hand. "I will never let silence get between us again. I will never let you feel lonely or replaced." We toasted to our new beginning, to the wisdom we had gained through pain, to the family that, despite being scattered around the world, was still united by unbreakable bonds. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Lucy and I found a new rhythm together, different from the one we had in Chicago, but just as satisfying. She fell in love with the town as much as I did, especially the sunrises over the ocean, which we watched together every morning from our terrace. We made new friends. Robert and his wife, Dolores, with whom we had dinner regularly. Old man Anselm, a retired fisherman who taught us the best spots to watch the sunset. The Torres family, owners of the local bakery, who saved us fresh donuts every Sunday. Our children visited when they could. Sarah and her family came for Christmas, filling the house with children's laughter. James and Daniel spent New Year's with us, bringing fireworks that lit up the beach at midnight. Even Henry promised to come for Easter with Mary and Valentina, who had already started taking her first steps according to the videos they sent us. One afternoon, as we were walking on the beach at sunset, Lucy stopped and looked at me with those eyes that I still found captivating after all these years. "Are you happy, Thomas?" This time, unlike that night in Barcelona, I didn't have to think. "Happier than I've been in a long time," I answered honestly. "And you?" "Immensely happy," she smiled. "You know, sometimes I think everything that happened, as painful as it was necessary." "Necessary?" "Yes. We had settled into a routine, taking what we had for granted. Sometimes you need to lose something to truly value it." I reflected on her words as we watched the sun sink into the horizon. She was right, of course. The crisis we had been through had forced us to look within ourselves, to acknowledge our mistakes, to value what truly mattered. My son said, "My father-in-law is more of a father than you at Christmas dinner, and I sold the house and disappeared," I said, repeating the title she herself had given our story. "Sounds dramatic when you put it like that." "It was," Lucy laughed. "But look where it brought us." I looked around. The golden beach, the infinite ocean, the sky painted in impossible colors, and next to me, the woman who had been my partner for over 4 decades, with whom I had shared joys and sorrows, triumphs and failures. "Exactly where we were always meant to be," I replied, pulling her close. As the sun disappeared, I felt a deep peace. Henry's hurtful words, which had caused me so much pain, now seemed distant, almost irrelevant. In their place, there was gratitude for the lesson they had taught me, for the journey they had forced me to take. Sometimes the deepest wounds are the ones that push us to grow, to change, to find new paths. And sometimes those new paths lead us exactly where we needed to be, even if we never would have imagined it. As we walked back home, with the first stars appearing in the sky, I knew I had found my place in the world. It wasn't just this town, with its wild beauty and infinite peace. It was this moment, this life, this family that, despite everything, was still mine, imperfect, scattered, sometimes complicated, but infinitely precious. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. If my story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to William's Revenge Stories and turn on notifications. Share in the comments if you have ever felt invisible to your own family. I would love to read your experience.